Okay, there we go. Okay, well, thank you all for coming out to our workshop, which is, which one is this? We're gonna work on the insurance. This is part 2. So I always like to, my name is Quincy and I'm with SCORE, the Houston chapter. And I would always like to start off with giving a little bit more about SCORE for those that very well may have heard or little or may not have heard anything about SCORE at all. So with that, SCORE is a national nonprofit with over 300 chapters and 11,000 volunteers nationwide. We help over 11 million entrepreneurs since we started. SCORE has a couple of different areas, and one of the nicest ones is that SCORE has mentors. And with the mentors, you can meet one-on-one with business experts and many different business specialists. We advise, educate, and encourage business leaders to help them develop as people and be successful in their business. You can always do that by requesting a mentor at houston.score.org. And one thing about the mentor, it is a free service. So I advise you, no matter how many workshops you take, always attach yourself to an actual mentor as well, because they can, with workshops, you get so much information at once. The mentors can kind of help you dive in some of those specific questions that you can always get answered or you think about later on after you get off the workshop. While we're talking about workshops, I noticed that most of y'all had to register. So with y'all registering, y'all have seen that we have a host of workshops on that website as well. So please don't look out for other stuff. It's there. While you're on the website, don't forget, we have information such as business plan templates, newsletter, cash flow analysis. And you can always do that by looking at houston.score.org. As always, we are affiliated with the SBA. I advise you to always go out and check the local district office of SBA, which is actually here in Houston, and see what the resources and training that they have. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass everything over to Keith. I'm sure that most of y'all have came in last time, but for those that have not, Keith has a vast knowledge of insurance. He's worked in many of different places and have many of different licenses from all over just about this. So he has more than enough knowledge. Keith?
Thank you, Quincy. Appreciate it. All right, let's get going. Let's do a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. For those of you that are back from seeing me on Tuesday, welcome back. You're obviously glutton for punishment. You came back for a second time. And for those of you that are new, what I do is I don't have any slides. I just have the beach back here in Hawaii. And you're going to listen to me talk. I'm going to go over 7 or 8 items that you really need to know about. And then after that, I'm going to look into the questions and answers column and also into the chat. And I will go through each one and give you a specific answer to any questions that you have. What this is all about is you getting knowledge. We're not trying to sell you anything. We're not trying to convince you of anything. What we're trying to do is we're trying to help you understand how insurance relates to your business. I had an interesting phone call with a really nice gentleman yesterday who was on the call on Tuesday, and we took a look at his policy. And we discovered that although he was paying a fair amount of money for insurance, he didn't have any insurance. As it turns out, the person that sold him the policy sold him the wrong policy. So it's terrible that he was taken advantage of. However, I give him a lot of credit because what he did is he listened to what was said, something's not right here. I want to talk to somebody, and asked a question, and I was able to talk it through with him. So that's what we're here to do. I want to preface this by saying that this is for educational purposes only. Any advice I give you is based on what little knowledge I know about your business. In order to get an insurance policy and do it correctly, someone needs to sit with you to discuss insurance. Insurance isn't something you can go online and get, especially commercial insurance, or just purchase it over the phone or that kind of thing. You really need to talk to somebody to get them to understand what your business is all about. On Tuesday, we talked about what I call all the liability side of it, all of the things where you can get sued. Today's conversation is all of the things that Mother Nature or God is going to do to your business. These are the things that, for those of you that are here in the Houston area, these are the things you know all about, because we live in a very catastrophe-prone area. This is also some of the areas where we just don't think about insurance too, and we'll get into some of those in a little bit. And then I'm going to talk to you about something that no one has talked to you about, and it's going to really make you think. And then when we finish with that, we're gonna go through the questions. So let's get going. The very first thing we're going to talk about is the elephant in the room. It's property coverage. It's the building. It's the building you're in. Now, a couple of things might happen. You might say, yes, I own my building. Like I own my building here where Studio 8 is. I own my building. I need to insure it. I need to insure it against all perils. And peril is the word that we use for what can happen to you. Fire, lightning, windstorm, hurricane, hail, weight of ice and snow, vandalism, malicious mischief, vehicle strike, that kind of thing. So if we're here in the Houston metropolitan area, our number one concern is a hurricane, because about once every 8 to 10 years, we have some sort of hurricane event that comes in, and we experience property losses. Understanding how to insure your building is important. In the state of Texas, and most states, for those of you that are not in the state of Texas, this also pertains to you. There is something called the 80% co-insurance rule. The state requires you to insure at least 80% of the value of your building. If you don't, and you insure less of that replacement cost, you will not get 100% of your claim if the claim happens. So that was a big bunch of blah that just came out of my mouth. Let me get it down to something we can digest. If I insure my building for 100% of the replacement cost, and I have $100,000 loss, I'm going to get $100,000 from the insurance company. If I insure it for 80% of the value, and I have $100,000 loss, I'll get $100,000. If I insure the value for 50% of the replacement cost, I'm never going to get my $100,000. I'm only going to get 50% of my claim. And that's a law that's done from the state level, the overlords, because what they don't want everybody to do is insure 5% of their building and then the client gets 100% of the coverage when it comes in. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your property policy is RCV, replacement cost value, not ACV, and that it's at 100% of the replacement cost. Now, some of you might say, okay, you're talking about something I don't care about because I don't own my building. Actually, you may be responsible to insure that building as part of your lease. And we're going to talk about leases in a little bit. That's going to be the shocker we're going to talk about. So when we get into leases, we'll talk a little bit more for those of you who are renting property or renting a location. The next one is the baby elephant in the room, and that is contents. That is everything in your room that you can pick up and walk out with. Okay. That could be computers, chairs, desks, paper, food, utensils if you have a restaurant, tables, chairs. It could be just about anything. Think about it this way. Take your building, tip it on its side, and shake it violently. Everything that goes out into the parking lot is contents. However, some of you, when you either bought your location or started renting your location or leasing your location, you came in and put up a wall. You painted, you put some carpet in, maybe you put some ceiling tiles on, maybe you put some track lighting in, that kind of thing. That's not contents. That's called TIB, tenants, improvements, and betterments. For those of you taking notes, write down what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you the ISO definition of TIB. Tenants, improvements, and betterments is anything a tenant permanently installs in their location that they can't legally take with them when they leave, that they paid for with their own money. 3 factors: permanently installed, can't take with them when they leave, and they paid for with their own money. So permanently installed, paint, walls, carpet. It could be the blinds. It could be just about anything. New door handles, anything. Paid for with your own money. That's easy to understand. But can't legally take with you when you leave. Well, how do you know what you can take with you when you leave? Well, that's in your lease. For the second time in less than 5 minutes, we've talked about the lease again. Okay. The nice part about TIB, when you find an insurance agent that understands commercial insurance, this isn't your home and auto person, this is somebody who understands business. If you tell them what you have, they're going to start asking you about TIB. TIB on average is about 20% cheaper to insure than contents. Some of you out there maybe have gone to your home and auto insurance agent and gotten a business policy right now, and you might have $200,000 worth of contents in your policy. Okay. Well, maybe half of that is actually TIB. You're paying too much for your insurance because they never asked you the question, because they didn't know to ask you the question. So building, property, contents, all the stuff that falls out, TIB, all the stuff that stays in when you shake it that you're responsible for. Okay. On top of that, you probably need what's called mechanical breakdown insurance. Your lease probably does, but may make you responsible for the air conditioning unit that's on the roof of the building or that's behind the building in a cage. If I come in the middle of the night and I decide I need, some more money for drugs or whatever, and I come with some clippers and I clip all the copper off of your air conditioning unit and I pull the core out of it, the next morning you don't have air conditioning. You call your landlord and you say, hey, you better go fix that. And they say, well, look at your lease. Your lease says that you're responsible for that. You call your insurance agent, you've got property, contents, TIB, that kind of thing. And you go, yeah, I'm putting in a claim. And the claim gets rejected because you don't have mechanical breakdown coverage. Okay. Or doesn't even have to be stolen. It could just break down. Here in Houston in the summertime, it's 100 degrees outside. It's really hard to work without air conditioning. Again, that's in the lease. We've now talked about 7 or 8 minutes and we're already talking about the lease 3 times. The next one is one that I'm pretty passionate about. It's called business interruption. Let's roll the calendar back to 2008, September 2008. I believe it was September the 13th, 2008. Hurricane Ike. If you go to September 1st, 2008, and you look at how many businesses were in business here in the Houston metropolitan area, and then you go a year later on September 1st of 2009 and look at how many businesses were in business, what you're going to find is about 25 to 30% of those businesses didn't exist anymore. There was actually a study done, and I really should pull it up and put it on these webinars from the Houston Chamber of Commerce, which is called I can't remember the name of it right now. Houston Greater Houston Partnership, I believe is what their name. And they did a study about how much business was lost after Hurricane Ike. And a lot of that loss was because people didn't have business interruption insurance. So what business interruption does is if something happens to your business, a covered peril, fire, lightning, windstorm, hurricane, hail, weight of ice and snow, that kind of thing, something happens to your business and your business can't run, business interruption pays you for as long as you're out of business to whatever level you've chosen on the policy. And you can still pay your people, you can still pay your rent, you can still make a profit. It's your business continues. This is business continuation insurance. Now, many of you are involved with SCORE. SCORE has some amazing partners that do loans for you and do SBA loans and that type of thing. You get your SBA loan, you get your business, you get up and running, everything's getting good. 9 months into it, you're really excited, you're starting to make a profit and that type of thing. And then all of a sudden we have a hurricane and your building is damaged and you're out of business for 3 months. Does the SBA say to you, well, we'll just let you wait on that loan. You don't have to pay us. No, the SBA says you owe us the money. We need to have it. What happens if it's not 3 months? What happens if it's 12 months? 16 months, 18 months. You know, the average business can't go without missing a couple days worth of revenue, never mind 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So what you really need to do is you need to look and see, do you have business interruption insurance? If you don't, why don't you? Why didn't your agent even talk to you about business interruption insurance? Okay. The next one is very similar, but this one is incredibly important. And those of us that are in the Texas area are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. And what that is what's called utility time element coverage. Utility time element coverage, excuse me, dealing with a sinus infection. Utility services time element coverage covers you when the utilities are disconnected from your location due to some covered peril, okay? Weight of ice and snow. Let's go back to February last year. I had clients that were out of business for 58 hours because they didn't have electricity. It was 19 degrees, 8 degrees, 10 degrees, and they didn't have electricity. If for some reason that's a covered peril, your power, water, sewer, natural gas, any sort of utility goes out, you need to have coverage for that. This coverage is very inexpensive. It's easily written onto a policy. And I can almost guarantee of all of the people that's on this call, there might be one of you that has this coverage. And you don't know that you don't have the coverage until something happens, until we have a February of last year happen. And then everybody goes, oh, well, I haven't been able to run my business. I can't run my restaurant. I don't have power, that kind of thing. Boom. And then your insurance agent says, oh, all you've got is general liability and a contents policy. Well, essentially you're paying insurance thinking you've got everything, but you've only got this much, right? We live in a world where we always think insurance is going to cover everything, but we actually live in a tunnel. And if you want everything covered, you have to have a policy that has everything. Next one, and this one affects almost everybody here, and I'm hoping that the gentleman that was on yesterday, that was the attorney, is on today, because this one is specifically for what he does. It's called EDP, Electronic Data Processing Coverage. Electronic data processing coverage is essentially, and I'm going to make this very simple, anything with a screen that processes information. So computers, fax machines, some of these high-end pieces of equipment that have screens on them. If you look at your business today, every single person on this call today, without exception, is on a computer. That's EDP. If I come to your location and I take your computer, put it on the floor and do the Mexican hat dance on your computer and hand it back to you, all broken, are you going to be able to work? Are you going to be able to get anything done? Well, you'd probably have to go out and buy another computer. Okay, that's great. But what about all the data that was on there? What about all your information? Maybe you're not putting it out to the web. Maybe everything's on your computer. That's what EDP covers. And EDP covers all of that electronic equipment, and it adds a peril called power surge. Power surge is not a covered peril under contents, but power surge is covered under EDP. So when all of a sudden it's boom, all of a sudden you get that, and everything flickers in your office, and your computer comes up with a blue screen of death on it, and you go, uh-oh, and you reboot it, and it's a blue screen of death, and then pretty soon it comes back and says, stop rebooting me, you're dead. What are you going to do? You want to hope like heck that you have EDP coverage. If you have EDP coverage, two things are going to happen. The insurance company is going to buy you all new computers. The second thing is they're going to pay to put all of those programs and all of that information back on your computer. Okay. That could save your business. So accountants, lawyers, doctors, dentists, anybody in the transportation industry, especially nowadays, the transportation industry is mostly all computerized. Anybody that is in a service industry, anybody selling online, anybody that has customer information, let's say, last night I had a massage at Massage Envy. When I went in there, everything is computerized. They checked me in by computer. They let the lady know that does my massage that I was there. And before she did my massage, she actually had a little tablet that says, okay, this is what we're going to work on today and that kind of thing. Everything's computerized nowadays. Okay. All you need is one good power surge and you're out of business. Okay. Some of you, not everybody here, needs to look at spoilage coverage. So if you are in the restaurant business, bar business, dealing with anything that you have refrigeration, freezers, anything like that, spoilage coverage is essential. If for some reason your walk-in freezer, walk-in fridge, that type of thing, just all of a sudden gives up the ghost and dies, you want to make sure that you have spoilage. Spoilage is also important if you're a doctor's office, injectable vaccines have to be kept at, like the COVID vaccine has to be kept at -79. Well, if all of a sudden it warms up, you've only got a couple of hours to give people shots, and then you can't use them anymore. Doctor offices, veterinarian offices, anybody that's dealing with anything that has an expiration date, you need to look at spoilage. All right. The next one I want to talk about hits home real close to home here. And depending upon where some of you also are, it might hit real close to home with you folks. I know it does in California today, and that's flood insurance. Flood insurance is probably one of the most misunderstood insurances in the insurance industry. And I'm going to try to make it as simple as I possibly can and convince you that everybody on this call needs a flood insurance policy. Flood insurance covers you for rising water. So think about it this way. God has sent us water. The water touches the ground, and then the water starts accumulating and comes into our business. That's flood. Flood is not a pipe in the wall that freezes and then a lot of water gets into my location. That's on your property policy, okay? Flood is water that has come down, has accumulated, and has increased, or water that has already been there and comes out of its bank or off the beach and comes and accumulates in your location, okay? And there's some special rules about how big it has to be. It has to be at least 2 acres and cover across one property line, and there's all kinds of processes behind it. But for the most part, rising water. The federal government takes the entire United States. Every single person in America lives in a flood zone. People say all the time to me, I don't live in a flood zone. I don't need flood insurance. No. Everybody lives in a flood zone. Even at the top of a mountain, you're in a flood zone. The zones are rated A, E, which is essentially river bottom. A, which is right in the middle of the river. B, sort of on the shore of the river. C, well, I'm sort of up on the hill looking at the river. Or X, yeah, I'm up pretty high. Okay? Depending upon what your zone is and what your elevation is within that zone determines your price. For the most part, you will not be allowed by your city, county, or state to build something in an AE zone. Are there people who live in an AE zone? Yeah, there are. But most people don't live in an AE zone. An A zone, there's a fair amount of people that live in an A zone, and those are people that built their homes or businesses maybe back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, back when regulation really didn't exist. The land was cheap and they built there. B zone, that's where a bunch of us live. A bunch of us live in the B zone. C and X zone is where we all want to live. Those are the places that are way out of the floodway and less likely to flood. But here's the amazing part. Hurricane Harvey in 2017 caused $108 billion in flood-related disasters. 108 billion with a B dollars. Much of that was not insured because many people in this area said, I don't live in a flood zone. Well, you don't until you get over 50 inches of rain. And then we all live in a flood zone. There were areas not too far from my home, beautiful homes that were new homes. And 1 minute, people were watching TV, watching the news, watching other people flood. The next minute, they heard a crash. They had 3 foot of 4 foot of water literally break down their front door, come through their front windows, come right through their house, out the other side, out the back door. And about 25 minutes, 30 minutes later, they had a house full of mud and the water was gone. Well, what happened was water had backed up further upstream. They lived not too far from a creek, and it had backed up, finally let go. And there was a tidal wave of water that came through. These are beautiful, brand new houses that everything you own is in somebody else's backyard. Okay. 32% of everyone who lives within the city limits of Houston are in a flood zone that is an A. That's crazy numbers. Okay. If you're, or I should say, not only A, you're 32% at risk of flooding in any 1 year. Okay. Which is even worse than just living in an A. If you're in an A or an AE, you have about a 26% chance of flooding in any 1 year. Okay. So you have a 1 in 4 chance of flooding. If you're in a B, C, or X, you have about a 25% chance of flooding within your lifetime. Okay. So you have about a 1 in 4 chance. Look at your neighbors, talk to your friends, ask them, did you flood in Allison? Did you flood in Ike? Did you flood in Harvey? Are people flooding today in California? I was going to say Southern California, but it's everywhere. It's Northern California too. This also covers mud, slurry, mudslides, anything where there's a liquefaction of the soil. Years and years and years ago, when I married my wife 35 years ago, we built a house on the side of a mountain called Mount Misery. We were up about 1,200 feet up of the mountain, and I bought flood insurance, and my neighbors laughed at me hysterically. They thought I was the dumbest person who had ever lived. And they said, you are an idiot. If the water gets 1,200 feet deep, we're all in trouble. The very next spring, this was up in the north, there was a huge melting of snow up above us on the mountain. And as it came down, it liquefied the soil and brought mud and water and detritus and just nastiness, and came right through our yard and wiped out a bunch of the houses down below me. And I went down to rescue some of them and talk to them and all that kind of thing. And they called their homeowners company, and their homeowners company says, no, that's not covered on a homeowners policy. And I said to them, how stupid do I look now about my flood insurance, right? But by the grace of God, I didn't need mine. It didn't go through my house. It went right through my backyard. But those people, had they had flood insurance, would have covered them. So I talked a lot about flood insurance because it's something that you desperately need to think about. Even if you don't own the property, you need it for your contents, especially if you're on the first floor. If you're on the first floor of anywhere, you should have a flood policy. And those policies sometimes are $150, $200 a year. They're super cheap, and they're easy to do. The next one I want to talk about is backup sewer and drain. Sort of fits into what we're talking about. A lot of people don't understand that when it does rain heavily, we have 2 systems in most cities. One is the sanitary sewer system, where all of your sewage goes through. And then the other one is a drainage system that drains parking lots and streets and that type of thing into bayous and streams and brooks and out to the ocean at some point in time. What ends up happening is sometimes when it rains very heavily, that sanitary sewer system collects a lot of that water It shouldn't, but it does. And sometimes you get positive pressure from the street back into your location. For those of you on the call that are in the northern areas, you have a basement and all of that sewage comes back into your basement. And then you have 20,000 gallons of sewage in your basement. You have a little poo pool down there, and then you got to clean that up. And what's down there? All your mechanical equipment's down there, your water heater, your furnace, your man cave, your kid's bedroom, that kind of thing. For those of us who live in the South, where we're just on slabs, that stuff comes out and it's automatically in our living area right away. Comes out of your bathroom, comes out of the toilets, comes out of the sinks, and it's everywhere. If it's in your business, you're not going to be able to run your business for some time. You've got to clean that up. And it's not just take a hose and 20 minutes later, you're back up and running. You're pulling off sheetrock off the walls. You're disinfecting, you're bleaching things, you're using kills. It's just a hell of a mess. So especially if you're on the first floor of any building, anywhere in the United States, or if you're in the basement on the ground floor, you need to really think about backup sewer and drain. I'm going to talk about 3 other ones, and then we're going to get back into talking about the leases. As business owners, especially if you're dealing with SCORE with SBA, if you go see an SBA lender and you say, I need $250,000, the SBA lender is going to say, okay, give me a business plan, show me what you're doing. They're very good about this. They're trying to keep you very focused. And when it's all said and done, they give you paperwork that's that thick and say, here, sign it. We're going to deposit $250,000 into your account. Good luck. Hope you make millions. Many of those agreements, not all, but many of them, make you guarantee that loan with life insurance. Life insurance is very important because if all of a sudden you pass away, somebody's got to pay that loan. The SBA just doesn't say, oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry you're dead. Yeah, we'll just waive it. No, they're going to look for that money. Okay. If you're in business with a partner, you sure as heck better have life insurance. So let's think about this. I'm an electrician. I'm a really good electrician. I sleep with my belt on and my hard hat, and I'm just the greatest electrician that's ever lived. However, I hate and despise doing bills, paying taxes, doing anything accounting, billing my clients. I don't want to deal with any of that. All I want to do is get in and do electrical stuff. So I've hired somebody who's an accountant. I've hired somebody that works for me, that does all of my billing, all of my customer stuff, does my customer service, does all of that. If that person dies tomorrow, is that person a key person to my business? What would it cost me to hire somebody immediately in this market, especially in this market, to replace that person? 100,000, 150,000. What would it cost to get somebody? That's a key person policy. You have a key person that your business really can't live without if something happens to that person. Let's flip that. Same exact situation. If all of a sudden I'm electrocuted and I die, what happens to that person's paycheck? Am I key to their financial survival? Some of you have partnerships. Some of you have groups of 2, 3, 4, and you're putting business together. Some of you are really good at what you do, and you have hired a staff below you to do what they're really good at. You really need to look at, have I got this stuff covered for either one? Partnerships. If one partner dies, what is your agreement with the partnership to take over the other person's ownership of the business? Are you going to be in business with that person's widow, who now has a new attorney boyfriend, who thinks your business is worth 6 times more than what it's worth? There's a pretty big case going on right now that I'm aware of here in the Houston metropolitan area, where a business owner died and left 3 kids, a divorced wife, and a new girlfriend. And every one of them said, we're getting part of that business. The other partner is saying, wait a minute, no, they died. They died. We have an agreement. That person was just an employee, wasn't actually an owner, all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, all the lawyers start getting involved, and it's money, 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 money. You have to have an agreement ahead of time. Everybody needs to sign it, and it's funded with life insurance. Same thing holds true for disability insurance. Sometimes dying is easiest. If I'm dead, I really don't care. I don't care what happens after that. But what would be terrible is if I'm disabled and I can't come to work, and I'm sitting in a bed drooling and having somebody feed me and that kind of thing, and my business still has to keep going. That money has to come from somewhere. Someone has to replace me. How can you afford to do that? So when you talk with your insurance professional, whether it's somebody you trust now, somebody you're going to find that you trust, or you call me, it doesn't make a difference. We're going to talk about all that stuff. And then we're going to get down to life insurance and disability. And you're going to think, God, how much more money can the insurance companies get out of me? Right. And I get that all the time. People are always like, I'm insurance poor. You have to plan for those times and those events that we just don't expect. And those $50 a month in life insurance is the difference between your business surviving and not. It's the difference between your spouse and your children eating or not. Same thing for disability. My dad, when I was 8 years old, was a police officer. He went to work. We kissed him goodbye. Half hour later, they called my mother, who was 29 at the time with 2 children, and said, your husband is dead. He's been run over by a tractor trailer truck. Come claim his body at the hospital so we can send him to the funeral home. She went to the hospital, sat with his body. He was in a body bag. They unzipped him so my mother could see him for final time and that kind of thing. And after a few moments, she noticed he was breathing. And she said, I think he's breathing. And they said, no, he's not breathing. And they went, oh, yeah, I guess he's breathing. I guess he's not dead. True story. They pulled him out of the body bag. He spent 3 months in the hospital. When he got out, his back was broken. And his heart was only beating on 3 chambers. He had congestive heart failure the rest of his life. He breathed and lived for another 42 years. Okay. My father bought a disability policy that would cover the cost of our mortgage 6 days before he was run over, for a total of $6. Without that $6, we would have lost everything. As it is, we lost everything. But we didn't lose our house because my father spent $6 6 days before he was run over. It's a God thing. In my eyes, it's a God thing. And he wasn't looking for disability insurance. He didn't care about disability insurance. One of his cop friends didn't want to be a cop anymore and became an insurance agent. And in order for my dad to get rid of him, he said, what does it take to get rid of you? And the guy said, sign this form and give me $6. And my dad curled up six $1 bills, threw it, and hit him in the forehead and said, "Get out of my face." And 6 days later, our mortgage was paid. A lot of people say to me, "Gee, Keith, you've been in insurance for over 30 years. I know why. It's because of that story." And it's no, I get fired from another job and needed something to do. So I started my own insurance business, but I'm passionate about insurance. Insurance is why I'm here today. It's why I got an education. It's why my business is so successful. If it wasn't for insurance, I'd be living in a van down by the river somewhere. I love this industry. One last thing to talk about before we get into the leases is commercial auto coverage. Many of you need commercial auto coverage. For those of you that are going out and doing business with any major corporation, you're going to get a copy of their agreement, either a franchise agreement or some sort of agreement to do business with them. And it's going to say $1 million general liability. You have to have a workers' comp, business interruption, or whatever it says. And then it's going to say, we want you to have $1 million worth of commercial auto insurance. Commercial auto insurance covers you in two directions, where personal lines auto pretty much covers you in only one direction. So let's go over that here real quick. Your personal lines auto covers you for what you're doing daily that's not involved with your business, with the exception of about six bailiwicks, 6 jobs. Insurance agents and doctors and lawyers and that kind of thing. Those folks can use their private vehicle during the day. For the most part, everybody else, if you're using your car in business, needs to be a commercial auto policy. Now, commercial auto policy covers you for when you're doing business, but it also covers you in your personal life too. So when you get a commercial auto policy, you can get rid of your personal lines auto policy. And a lot of people don't realize that. And they always go, "Oh my goodness gracious, I'm already paying for insurance. I got to pay a second time that time." No, you don't. And for the most part, commercial auto doesn't have to be a lot more expensive than personal lines auto. Now, it can be if you're in the trucking business. If you're in the trucking business right now, rates are through the roof. Every company in America has lost their mind because of, and it's not because the companies have lost their mind, but they have set rates so high that a lot of people are shopping and they're finding out that they can't get it any cheaper anywhere else. Lots of attorneys involved in claims right now. Any of you who have driven since COVID realize that everyone forgot to drive during COVID. Go to a red light anywhere in your community. When it turns green, look in the opposite direction and count to 10 before you move. How many people go through the red light in the other direction, right? People have lost their minds. They're on the roads doing 100 miles an hour. It's crazy. In fact, it's so bad that in 2022, more people died on U.S. roads than died in, like, I think it was 1972 or 1974, which was the most. That was before seatbelts. And some of us remember before seatbelts. And more people died in safer cars. People are just driving like idiots. So commercial auto is really important. If somebody comes to you and says you need a commercial auto policy, please don't take cyanide and think, "Oh my God, I'm killing myself because it's going to be so expensive." Don't do that. It can be easily done, and any decent commercial agent can get that done for you. All right. Let's talk about this last thing before we get into the questions and answers. And it appears as though we have a bunch of them. I talked about leases over and over and over and over again. In order for a insurance company to pay a claim, we need to know what's called insurable interest. What does your agreement say that you have to insure? If you have never read your lease, you don't know. Many, many, many times I talk to a client and I say, give me a copy of your lease. And what do I get? I get page 5, section 11, and it's the insurance section, and it's this big, and it says, you need $1 million general liability, make me an additional insured. That's it. And I say to them, I need the rest of the lease. And they said, oh, you don't need that. You don't need to see what my lease is. They don't want me to see how much they're paying in rent or something. I really don't care. I said, no, I need to see the rest of your lease. And they say, why? Because I need to know, are you responsible for insuring the building? Are you insuring the TIB? Are you responsible for any sort of mechanical breakdown? Are you responsible for common area maintenance? Are you responsible for the utilities there? Are you responsible for the elevator? And I just recently talked to somebody. They sent me their lease. They're on the first floor of the building, and in their lease, the landlord wrote in their lease that they're responsible for the maintenance of the elevator, and they're on the first floor. And I said to him, did you realize this? Oh, I didn't realize this. I said, well, didn't you read your lease? And they said, well, I read the important page. Yeah, the page of how much you owe and the signature page. They never read their lease. Well, my attorney read the lease. Yeah, your attorney read it for the legal gotchas. But did you give it to your accountant? And did you give it to your insurance agent? If your insurance agent, whoever you have right now, has never asked you for the complete lease, run away. Because what they've done is they've given you insurance without knowing what you needed. That's crazy. Any good insurance agent will ask you for a full copy of your lease. If you're involved in a franchise, any good insurance agent wants to see your franchise agreement. I teach all over the country. I teach insurance agents. I teach adult education. I'm constantly talking to people about insurance. I went and taught to some franchise owners, restaurant franchise owners. I had already gotten a copy of their franchise agreement, and I said to everybody in the room, all right, I want you to tell me what you need for insurance. And everybody went to page 5, section 11, $1 million GL, and everybody raised their hand. I was like, okay, did everybody agree with that? Oh, yeah, they agree with that. And then we went through the lease. There were 15 other things on that lease, or that franchise agreement, which they were responsible for. I got to the end of it. Everybody's rubbing their heads and everything. I said, okay, let's pull out our insurance policies when you get back to your offices, and let's go through those. Call me. And we went through, and to a man and a woman, every single one of them did not have the proper coverage. Had something happened to their business, many of them would have been out of business. I'm going to say something, and some of you are going to laugh because you know it's true. Many of you love your businesses more than you love your own family. Many of you spend more time in your businesses than you spend with your own family. Many of you would rather be in your businesses than be with your family. If you don't have the right insurance, you're not only going to not have a business, you're not even going to have a family, because when the money stops, that's when things get bad. So not only are we talking about business continuation, we're talking about marriage continuation, family continuation, and sanity continuation. All right. So I hope you learned something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the question and answer box, and then I'm going to go into the chat, and we'll take a look at everybody's comments. And if you had questions, or feel free to throw questions in there right now if you want. If you want me to say something about your business, or give you a quick thought about your business, put what type of business you have, either in the questions and answers or in the chat box. And when we get to you, we'll give you a free look. All right, so let's take a look. I'm going to start with questions and answers. David says, is internet connection covered under utility services time element insurance? Yes, it is. Make sure that you get utility services time element. There's 3 or 4 different types of utility services time direct, utility services time direct damage. When you talk to your agents, say, I want to make sure that this is covered. But nowadays, internet connection, well, you can't do anything without an internet connection. All right. Lisa's back from yesterday. Business interruption insurance. Would this have protected businesses during the pandemic? Good question. How do they determine the difference between being unable to function and market fluctuation, i.e. service-based business that can still technically function, but the clients are not operating, that are in a crisis? All right. Business interruption does not cover viruses and bacteria. As it turns out, back during SARS, the initial SARS back in 2012, the insurance industry as a whole took a look at that. And although SARS never quite hit the United States bad, we had a couple hundred cases and that was it. They went, ooh, this could get bad if we have a pandemic. And what they did nationally, almost to a company, they took that off of the policy. Okay. And they thought, if we have a pandemic, this is going to be the purview of the federal government and not the insurance industry. We can't rate for a pandemic. You just don't know what a pandemic's going to do, how many people are going to die, what the government's going to do, and that kind of thing. So the answer to that question, I am so sorry. The pandemic is a no. How do they determine the difference between being unable to function and a market fluctuation? Remember, it always has to be a peril. So market fluctuation is not something that's usually covered. What you're thinking about with business interruption is something has happened to your business that is a covered peril. One of the 9 or 10 that I keep doing this with. If it happens to you and your business, what we look at is, where were you last week versus this week, last month versus this month, last quarter versus this quarter, last year versus this year. And that's how they determine how the payout is. Okay. What is the full name of utility insurance? That is utility time element, or it could also have the word services in there, utility services time element. Some people, when you call them, will sell you utility services. Nothing else after that. You don't want that one. Some people will sell you utility services, direct damage. You probably don't want that one either, because that means it has to be disconnected directly from your building. If you get utility services time element, the peril can happen anywhere. And if the power is off at your location, you're covered. So look for utility services time element. That's the one you want. And then you're going to pick a value of how much you want to get. And in fact, write this down. This will be an equation. How much do you make per day times 14 days? About 90% of utility claims that are paid in the industry last less than 2 weeks. Okay. So if I make $5,000 a day, I'm going to go 14 days. I'm going to ask for $70,000 worth of coverage. Okay, so that's the equation, the thumbnail equation we use. If you're in a real catastrophe prone area, you could do a month's worth. But 90% of all these claims are paid in about less than 14 days. All right, Lisa says again, does EDP also protect you against disgruntled employees who deletes everything? Or that would be cybercrimes. It does not cover disgruntled employees. But I may back myself up off of that. One of the covered perils is malicious mischief. In 30 years, Lisa, no one has ever asked me that question. You've got me thinking. You stumped the chump today. I would like to look into that. If at the end, I'm going to give my email address. If you will send me a little note with that question again, I will do some investigating, and then I will send you an answer on that one. My initial reaction was no, but under malicious mischief, that might be a yes. So let me check that. Dula says the tenant refused to get a GL. What are the options besides asking him to leave? I would ask him to leave. I own some commercial buildings, and before you even move in, you're getting a GL. There really aren't a lot of options. Make sure you have a GL on the property, but if that person is that obstinate, when a claim does happen, they're going to throw you under the bus. I would tell them to go. There isn't enough rent payments to you that's worth dealing with the exposure you have there. So sorry to see you're going through that. Mendy says, what coverage would I need for a pet resort that includes daycare, boarding, training in a leased building? Ooh, that's a nice one. That's a fast growing industry right now. That's exploding. There are specific policies that are called BOPs, business owner policies, that are out there that specifically aim to your industry. In fact, we represent a number of these places, and what happens is it'll cover, if you're responsible for the building, it'll cover your building. If you're just leasing, it'll cover any of the requirements you need for the lease, your contents, your TIB, because a lot of times you have TIB in there where you've put up fenced in areas, little play areas for the dogs, keep the big ones away from the little ones and all that kind of thing. And then you've got your workers' comp. You definitely need some cyber coverage. You're going to need some EDP because you've got everybody's information in there. But all of that stuff can be put together on a BOP. And so you get one policy that pretty much takes care of everything for you. So that's a neat one. If you're interested in talking further, give me a call or email me at the end, and I would love to go through that with you. That's a great industry. I'm a dog fan. I'm a big dog. I have 3 grand dogs, and they're a big part of our lives. So that's nice. Can I get a consultation or review necessary insurance business? Saul, at the end, I'm going to put up my email address. Just reach out to me, and it's free, no obligation. Be happy to sit with you, go through everything you've got. If what you've got is great, I'm going to say, great, stay where you are. If it's bad, I'm just going to tell you what's bad and what's good. If it's really bad, I'm going to say you need to find something else. I'm happy to do that. Healthcare, leasing the building. Do I need RCV? Absolutely. I think everybody needs RCV. Replacement cost value is the way to go. If you want to write this down, this is another little equation to think about ACV versus RCV. RCV is we will pay you whatever it costs to replace whatever is lost. So let's take this to your house, and so we all understand it. I've been married 35 years. Our dining room table we got when we got married. So our dining room table is 35 years old. What the insurance companies do generally, and I'm generalizing here, is they say everything has a 100-year life. So if it's RCV, we don't care how old it is. We paid $200 for that table back 35 years ago. But if I go to Gallery Furniture or Star Furniture or something now, it's going to cost me $1,200. They're going to pay me the full $1,200 so that I can rebuy that table. Okay. However, if it is an ACV policy, what they're going to do is they're going to take the $200 I spent and then say 35% of that, because it's 35 years old, has depreciated away. So now we're going to give you, what does that work out to? About $130 for that table. And that's going to be it. You never want to go with ACV, ever. ACV is only good the year something's built, because that's the replacement cost, right? It's the actual cash value. Once you have a year's worth of depreciation, you don't want to play with that. It's very, very dangerous, very dangerous. All right, let me go into the chat and let's see. Good morning, Tina. CY says, does anyone have the link? Okay, that was some maintenance that was going on in the background. And Quincy said yes, and Lalitha, there we go. FT says, what's my contact info? I'm going to show that to you here in just a bit. And then, okay, EDP, phones and tablets used for work. Absolutely. Phones and tablets are part of EDP. Anything that transmits information or has a screen, and most phones have screens nowadays, are part of EDP. So for EDP, let's think about this. Computers, Wi-Fi's, alarm systems, telephones, tablets, also your printers, scanners, what's the word I'm looking for? Your servers that you might have on your location, that's EDP. EDP can also be your big screen TVs that are in there. Some businesses use a big screen TV and it runs a commercial in the background out in your lobby and that kind of thing. Some people turn them sideways and use them as a menu board in a restaurant, or maybe our friend here who has the doggy daycare, they might have one of those stuck up there, and it's $25 a day and blah, 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 blah. And then we can send them home with a bath with blueberry scent on it and all that kind of stuff, which I have a little grand dog that gets the blueberry scent wash when they go, and that kind of thing. Okay. Let's see. What? Wow. Okay. Oh my God. Oh, that must be when I was talking about my dad. Yep. True story. If I manage rental houses, do I need commercial auto liability policy? It's a good question. It depends upon how what you're doing with that vehicle. If you're just going from point to point, checking on the houses and that kind of thing, you can do that on your personal lines. And on your personal lines policy, what you do is call your insurance agent and say, I want the business class use of my personal lines policy. And then you should be okay. There is an exception in the rules that say people going from location to location, business location to business location, that is covered under under personal lines as long as it's a business use. On average, and this is just an average, adding business use to your coverage, $35, $38, $40 every 6 months. It's not much, but you should be okay. AV is a landlord who rents single family homes. All right, this one's easy. You need to make sure that you have coverage for the building on every single building. If each building has its own separate business name and its own separate FEIN, you need separate policies, not all on one policy, because you'll pierce the corporate veil. That'll be disastrous in a lawsuit. And then you want to make sure you have general liability on every single one of them. And I would also recommend an umbrella policy on top of that, additional liability. If you own 5 of these or 10 of these or 20 of these, and they're all in the same FEIN, if you go out and get $1 million general liability policy, that $1 million is spread across all 20 of those locations. So you could have a claim at one that could wipe out all of the coverage that you have for the rest of the year. Or if you have a second one and you get through your aggregate, it could wipe out all of your coverage for the rest of the year. That's why you'd want to have an umbrella policy. So depending upon how you're set up, is depending upon what type of insurance. What I mean is, what if your clients are affected? Okay. I think this is Lisa again. If your clients are affected by something that happens to you, I think is what you're saying, that could be part of their business interruption. There is a type of business interruption coverage that covers if you can't get something from a supplier or a vendor, or your customer source has been cut off. There is very specialized coverage for that. And it would depend upon what type of business you're in and what you do, whether they would qualify and what type of business they're in. But I'd be willing to discuss that at greater depth with you. And that's a good question. Thanks for the info. Okay. Thank you. LLC, good. If your client's business is interrupted by a peril, but your business is not, if your business is not affected by the peril, but their business is, yeah, you would not have coverage on your business interruption. The peril would also have to happen to you also. Okay, thanks. Just curious. I was remembering the loss in the hospitality industry during Harvey. Yeah. And this is, I'm going to give an example, and you guys are going to look at me and say, oh my God, this is minutia, but it goes to show you how insurance is done. If I have a hotel, I have a Holiday Inn Express, and we have Hurricane Harvey. No one can come to the city of Houston because we've had Hurricane Harvey. Business interruption doesn't cover that. However, if all of a sudden Hurricane Harvey blows out my front door and I have to board over my front door, and it's boarded over and it takes 3 or 4 weeks, and that business interruption covers it. If the peril happens to your location, business interruption will cover it. If the peril just happens to happen in the general area and now my customers aren't coming in, that really doesn't cover. So you've got to you got to be very specific. And I'm going to say something incredibly stupid. Hope that something happens to your building, right? If something happens to your building, then everything, all the lights go on. If something doesn't happen to your building, then yeah, you're kind of stuck. Tenant does not want to get the GL. What is the alternative? The alternative is you get a GL for your business. However, you are going to be exposed to anything that client does at their business. And let's say you own a strip center and that person owns I don't know, a convenience store. If somebody comes in there and shoots up the place, and some of the clients in there get shot up, not only are they going to be sued, but they'll probably sue you too, as the strip center. They're not going to have general liability, and they're just going to go out of business, and then you're the one that's going to be fighting the claim. I just don't think anybody who has a tenant that won't get a GL, you just really don't want them, because there's not really much you can do besides having your own GL. You can't get a GL in their name because you're not the named insured. So that's a tough one. That's a real tough one. I operate a nonprofit and a for-profit business. Do I need two separate commercial policies? Absolutely. If you have two separate FEINs, you need two separate policies. What you don't want to do is put them on one, because if one gets sued, then you pierce the corporate veil, and then the other one is brought in. You want to have two, and I'm not an accountant, I'm not giving you accounting advice or legal advice, I'm not an attorney, but you never want to have the same checkbook for both. You never want to have the same lease for both. You never want to have anything the same for both. If one's a not-for-profit and one's a for-profit, keep them totally separate always. Okay. And there's some mentors at SCORE that will help you with that are really very good with that. My GL will not renew if the tenant doesn't get one. Yeah. And that's something, which goes back to up above. There are some carriers that say, if you're a commercial business owner, they want to see that everyone below you that you rent to has a GL, and that you're named an additional insured with a waiver of subrogation. And that you could run into that if you're the owner of this building where your tenant doesn't want to have a GL. Okay, so that's a heck of a challenge. All right, another one has just popped up. How do we preserve evidence for claiming EDP? Does EDP cover computer, phone, tablet loss during during travel? How about data loss during cyber attack, covered only by cyber insurance? All right, there's a lot there to unpack. How do we preserve the evidence for claiming EDP? Really, it's based on trusting you. For the most part, claims person's going to come and say to you, you're going to say, the power surge gave me a blue screen of death. I had all my customer information on here. And the claims person's going to say, well, how many customers do you have? I have 2,500 customers. How long have you had those customers? 5 years. All right. The claims people have a feel for that, and then they're going to say to you, what software were you using? I was using Epic. I was using, so some software. They already know the price of that software because they pay these claims all the time. So if you say, I'm using Epic, I have 2,500 customers, and I've been in business 5 years, they pretty much know exactly what it's going to cost to put those 2,500 people in there, because they've been to this rodeo. They know it. Most claims organizations are really very good nowadays. There were years where it wasn't, but claims nowadays especially with the advent of the internet, have gotten pretty easy. Does EDP cover computer, phone, tablet when it's lost? EDP for the most part will cover your premises only. Where your computer, tablets, and phones and that kind of thing would be covered is there are little inland marine policies that you can put onto your BOP, that you can add them on, that give you coverage off premises. Contents will only cover you on your premises or within either 100 feet or 1,000 feet, depending upon the policy, outside your premises. And then when it goes somewhere else, it doesn't cover. So what you want to do is, if you get a BOP, most BOPs will have a little policy in there, a little inland marine policy that allows you to take things off site. But if you do travel a lot, we can get you a policy that does that. The cyber, we talked about that on Tuesday. That is, the FBI says, the #1 fastest growing crime in America. All that data that's lost due to a cyber attack, that's not EDP. That's under the cyber liability insurance, and you desperately need cyber liability. I don't know of a business nowadays that doesn't need cyber. It's not sold nearly enough. Because the average agent doesn't understand it. They're more interested in homes and autos. But we sell a ton of cyber liability insurance. We desperately need to sell more because you all need it. And if you need to put all that money or all that information back into your computer, that's a lot of money. What is the initial cost to package all 10 insurances? All 10 insurances, all 10 of the ones we discussed. I guess I'm a little, throw in a little more information on there when you talk about all 10. I'm going to answer the question I think you asked, and then we'll see if I get it right. What's the initial cost to package everything we talked about today? That's sort of like asking how long is a piece of string. I really can't tell you. It's based upon how much revenues you make. It's based upon what type of business you are, what your location is. There are a lot of factors, and there isn't a soul on here where I can say, well, your policy is going to be $500 or $5,000 or $5 million. Until somebody sits down with you, a professional insurance agent sits down with you that deals with commercial, we really can't tell you what the price is. Now, there are two ways to buy insurance. You can buy it a la carte. Like when you go to a Chinese restaurant, you have dim sum, they come by with the cart and they say, what would you like? Chicken feet and some wings, and they put it on the card and you just buy what you ordered. Or you can go to the same Chinese restaurant and you pick up the number 3 menu or the menu, and you want the number 3. It comes with rice, meat, spring roll, sorry, no substitutions. Okay, that's called the BOP. And I love the BOP because the BOP covers you for just about everything that can happen. And many industries, insurance companies have BOPs for specific industries. Sort of like the young lady that was talking earlier, who has the doggy daycare. There is a specific BOP for that. So that's easy. Some industries are so complex that there is no BOP for it. If you're into steel manufacturing or something like that, there's no BOP for that. We're going to have to do separate policies. That's going to be dim sum. That's going to be a la carte every time. So. DA says, can I call you, get a quote? Absolutely. This presentation is not meant as a sales presentation. However, anybody who wants to call, I'd be willing to talk to you. There's going to be no high pressure. If you want me just to look at your policies and tell you whether they're good or bad, I'm happy to do that, and I'm not gonna bend your arm. I've been doing this a long time, and what I want to do is I want to spread the word of insurance and the value of insurance to everybody that's out there. I'm going to close by giving you something to think about. I heard this a number of years ago, and I've stolen it and made it mine. The insurance industry is the oxygen of the economy. The insurance industry makes up 1/7 of the total US economy. It is as big as healthcare, the auto industry, and the computer industry. 1/7 of the US economy is insurance. Without insurance, if insurance stopped today, the water to your house would shut off. There would be no food in the grocery store. You would have no toilet paper. The lights would go off. Every single thing you see and do is insured. Take a look wherever you're sitting right now. The space you're sitting in is insured. Open up your window shade, look outside. Everything driving by is insured. If it's in an 18-wheeler, everything inside that 18-wheeler is insured. Every building you see, everything you see is insured. Not everything you see is insured correctly. Everything's got insurance, but not everything's done correctly. So what you need to do is, whether it's me or somebody else, you need to find yourself a professional commercial agent that has many years of experience in the commercial industry that can sit down and discuss your business with you. Any agent you talk to that the call ends in 2 or 3 minutes and they go, yeah, we can give you a quote tomorrow, and they give you a quote, run like heck from those people. If you call me, it may take a week or two before you even get a quote, because I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to talk to a lot of underwriters. I'm going to shop it to 272 companies, and I'm going to then come back and ask you a bunch more questions. I'm going to keep asking you questions till your ears bleed. And at some point in time, you're going to say, am I ever going to get a quote? And about that time is when I'm going to give you a quote, because I want to make sure that I've got you totally covered. A good insurance agent is going to take you, wrap you in bubble wrap, put you in a very thick cardboard box, put bubble wrap around that box, and put you in a second box. And then no matter what happens to that box, you're going to be sitting safe inside. The box is going to get kicked and crushed and beat up, and you're going to be a little egg sitting inside there and being taken care of. The worst thing that can happen to you is you have an insurance policy. We look at it like what happened yesterday with that one other gentleman that was on the call. And I said to him, and he laughed. I said, you know what your insurance policy is good for? He said, what? I said, if it's raining outside, take it and put it on top of your head. And it's going to cover your bald spot and keep your head dry until the paper gets wet. And that's what he was paying for. Essentially, he had no coverage whatsoever, but he was paying for insurance. All right. So, so thank you for coming. If you give me a moment, I am technically not very good. So I'm going to share my screen. And if either Quincy or Lalitha will say yes, if my screen is being shared.
Yes, sir.
All right. And let me see if I can make it bigger. So everybody can see it better. And there we go. Well, there we go.
There we go.
All right. That's my name. That's my email address. That's my phone number. Like I say, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody. and let you know I am licensed in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. So those of you that are on the call from outside the Texas area, I can certainly talk to you also. And if you reach out to me, I promise I'll get back to you within 24 hours, and we can set something up. With that said, thank you all, and I appreciate SCORE, and I appreciate Quincy and Lalitha for everything they do.
Okay. Well, if that's all you have to say, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out to another one of our workshops. Don't forget to always go to our website and check out and see what's coming up next. If y'all don't have any more questions, I'd like to thank Keith for once again coming to do this for us. And y'all have a great rest of your morning.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.